Jesus. So, we jiggle, 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 jiggle. Well, that's no good. Sloppy toppy steering wheel. So, the reason being for that in this car is this is a 1981 Toyota Corolla USDM. So here, this would have been a TE72, not a KE70 like a lot of the world got, not an AE70 or anything. So these came with the venerable 3TC engine, great motors. However, any of the T series cars came with steering gearbox. So a different subframe than basically all of the other ones in the world, and with a steering gearbox and drag link, idler arm, pitman arm, you know, all that nonsense, instead of rack and pinion. This car is swapped to an AE86 front subframe, straight bolt in, and rack and pinion out of an AE86. In the US, this car did come available in 83 as an AE70. So they came with the 4AC and, you guessed it, rack and pinion. So this steering column is actually out of a 83 Toyota Corolla, also station wagon, USDM model. Not a direct bolt-in. They're actually offset a little bit to one side, so you kind of got to slot the column. And the holes at the firewall are almost all exactly the same. I think there was one hole that needed to be moved to bolt it down there. So, pretty close to a straight bolt-in to go rack and pinion. However, you can see here, that's the hole I had to slot. But I believe the rest were all direct alignment. And you can see down here, very questionable stuff going on at the intermediate shaft to the slip joint there. You don't want those welded. As you can see, someone, myself, did some crappy welds on there to try to tighten up the sloppy. But because that is designed to collapse in the event of an accident, so that the steering wheel doesn't impale you, you don't want that welded, and you definitely don't want it welded good. So I always just tried to booger something on there to take up the slop, but would break in event of a impaling situation. So you guessed it, they always broke. Why is it like that? Well, so for demonstrations purposes, we'll go to our storage department and get a A86 column here, and you'll see this is a, you dropped it there. This is a pretty tight fit on the little D shaft there, but these stock intermediate shafts, they slide in or out, give you a little bit of room for getting racks and stuff in. They are extremely tight fit, and the inner part of the intermediate shaft is actually coated with like a rubber coating, which makes them extremely hard to get in and out. And if you're an idiot or a hack or a lazy turd who's having too hard of a time compressing your intermediate shaft, you grind off all that rubber coating and suddenly it slides in easily. Great, you're done. Except for now, you've got a sloppy steering column. Nobody wants sloppy steering. So I think today, pretty ugly day. Car's already in the backyard. I guess we'll just turn it around and work back here. I think we're gonna go ahead and fix it. I think the right way? Well, the right way is probably a new OEM intermediate shaft. We're not gonna do that way. We're gonna do a right way though. So, guess let's pull that thing out. It's really only a couple bolts. We're gonna do the whole column instead of just the intermediate shaft. That way we have the inner so we can really dial it in, right? Sure. Since my column is pretty much straight with the steering wheel, gonna try to make a little reference mark. Try to get it back the way it was. The Sharpie's not the healthiest. I think we made a mark. We'll see if it stays. Otherwise, it can only be so far off, and I guess I really don't care that much. So we'll crawl under there, leave the bottom to the column, intermediate shaft U-joint, the 12 long bolt. We'll pull that out. We'll go in the car, blast it apart, yank this column out. So we've got our ratcheting 12mm wrench up here. What are you doing down there? I meant up here. So you can see that I did not jack the car up high enough. So we're very cramped. But we've got our through bolt here, loose enough where, take that deep breath so you're not huffing and puffing the whole time. Anyway, so we should be able to get that the rest of the way out and slide our spline shaft out of the U-joint at the rack. We're gonna do that when we do the whole column and not worry too much about trying to get it out before we do that. So in your filthy, dirty, never been vacuumed car, you're gonna have a various assortment of this ducting needs to come off, this under trim needs to come off, and then up here, right up there, you're gonna have a few bolts that hold the column in, and up top you're gonna have two, I believe 17s, maybe 19s, that hold the column up into the car. And you're gonna lose all of these bolts under your carpet because, well, you have to. It's the rules. Come on. Oh, don't lose it now. And this bottom one here, it's a stud that goes through, so you're gonna have a nut on the outside of the firewall. And then we got that one, and that should be all of the bottom ones. Oh, we didn't lose any, we broke the rules. We got this main plug here that goes up to the column, to the chassis, so we're gonna disconnect that one right quick like. Pull it out, and then we should have our two big bolts on either side of the column. Drop those, and the whole thing just right out. Ow! And we're done, just like that. So since you're a dummy and you've wired your car to, you know, be easy to wire, not easy to take apart, you'll probably have wires that are hanging under your column. Yeah, like myself. And there's also this other plug that you didn't unplug. So you should go ahead and do that one now that you're juggling 10 other things. Stupid. Oh, got it. Yep, we got it. There it goes. Okay. So, simple as that. Ugh. Now you close the door on yourself. In record time. Just kidding. Yeah, so let's drag this whole ensemble into the garage, take it apart, and see what we can do. Clean that up. These here are the holes that I said I had to slot or elongate or make larger in order to try to center the column in the pre-83 dash, using the pre-83 dash bar. You can swap the dash bars out, but that's like a whole lot more work. Or you can just open these holes out and run big washers, like I did. Notable mention, this is actually an extended intermediate shaft. Pretty sure that's a wrist pin for a 2JZ. I don't actually remember. Did that a long time ago. I believe this is the power steering intermediate shaft. So it's too short for a manual column manual rack. So this one's been extended. Like I said, pretty sure that's a wrist pin for a 2J. Maybe not. Maybe just some random tubing I found. Hey, could be even a 17mm socket. Who knows? Welds look good though. So between the resistance fit that should be there and some of these crappy welds that we have added over the years, my intermediate shaft is not just sliding right out of there. So we might have to get crafty there. I don't think my workbench was set up for this direction of load, whacking with a hammer, but we're gonna try this until we don't, and then we'll maybe hit that with a grinder and see if we can't free up some of those weld joints. Grinder time. I'd like to note that unless you've ever welded your intermediate shaft in, you shouldn't have to do this part. You know, this should be a, like I said, a resistance fit to a stock intermediate shaft, a lot of times just adding heat with a torch and letting it soak with some WD or PB or something like that. That'll be all you need to do to get a stock one out. Trying this and hammering on it, just patience, really. Patience is what got us here, not having any. So now I'm cutting my intermediate shaft out because there's 4 years of bugger crappy welds just piled up on there.
Oh yes, grinding right into the can of MAP gas. Brilliant.
Patience, children. Patience. Patience. Bent my locking pliers. Don't ever weld your intermediate shaft in. There's even a slight chance you might have to pull it back out someday. Or just at all. Like I said, steering wheel to the chest, probably not the best. That rhymed? My goodness, I think we've actually got it coming out. Magical. So, that's what it shouldn't look like on the inside. So, first order of business here was cleaning up this larger part of the D shaft that's connected to the column. I don't want to open up this opening any more than it already is, but I do have a little lip of weld right here that I want to knock off. So it's going to do that the hard way with this hand file that's round because I don't have any small flat ones, but you know, we'll knock that down and then address the bigger issue. I do feel comfortable saying that this is in good enough, close enough to OEM spec, cleaned up, that we can now move on to why the hell does this look like this? And well, that's a great question, because honestly, I'm not 100% positive. I remember actually, because I did this when I did the 20 valve swap, is when I did the column swap. When I first did the rack and pinion subframe swap, I actually modified the OEM column to accept the right length and to a, you know, it worked. That had jiggle up and down inside the column, but it didn't actually have any side-to-side swap. I believe, actually, if I go rooting around through my totes of Toyota crap in the shed, I probably have this length OEM unfahoogled intermediate shaft. And I could probably just stick that in there and we would be done and this would be over. But I think we're going to try to fix what we've got here because I might need that fella later. This is also useful knowledge for if you buy excessive. I think excessive manufacturing makes a correct length intermediate shaft for Toyota swaps. However, theirs is not coated with the rubber either, and those can kind of jiggle. I believe a lot of the guys on the interwebs just fill the column with RTV before they slide that bad boy in there, and that should take up a lot of the slop. You can see here, actually, I tried to plasti dip this, not like the dip your whip colored stuff that people used to do on their cars before vinyl wraps, but you know, the kind you dip your tools in back in the day, like rubberized handles. Anywho, that did not work at all. It was cool, sort of worked when I first did it, but it didn't. You can see though, this thing tapers down at the end. That was so I could make it easier to slide in and out, and well, what a fool. So what we're gonna do is clean this bad boy up and add a bunch of weld to it, and then try to hand machine it back down to the correct shape. And if that doesn't work, well, I'll use the one that I think we have in the shed, and all of this will have been for naught. But we're gonna try the hard way first. Yeah, grab the welder. Okay, or don't, whatever. I should probably put on shoes as well. I'm wearing flip-flops. So it's funny because, you know, in taking this down to clean so that we'd have a good surface to weld to, I'm taking more material off, which is funny because I wonder if my battery's about to die in this thing. It's flashing. I assume that's a dead battery. Anywho, so before we get started, the rounded end perpendicular to it seems to be right at 19 millimeter, which tracks. This is metric. And so let's run that again. Boy, this thing is all over the place. Maybe she's whacked, because that's saying 23 now. All right, let's zero that bad boy back out. Yeah, we're at 5 mil, 0. Okay. Man, they ought to make these batteries last longer. I think this one's already dying. Okay. Once again, 19 mil on the rounded sides. So that puts us down here at, I'm getting 13.9, which would probably be an interference fit for 14 millimeter. It's probably 14 mil. So we're gonna call our flats 14 millimeter, our rounded side 19 millimeter. I'm gonna try to stay off of the rounded side down here, because I know up to here we're probably in pretty good spec. Up here it tapers down. I might add a little bit around the tip, but I'm mainly gonna focus, I think, everywhere. Definitely, this is our bigger issue, I think, but we want to fatten up the flats because that's where a lot of our twist is. The other thing is these indents that are just normal stock. I don't know, maybe grease is supposed to sit there, or that's where it's supposed to have enough movement for you to be able to get it in and out. Anywho, those, if they end right at the end of your larger shaft, that can also give you a lot of slop. So we might try to take some of that divot out. We'll see. We'll put some toad shoes on and grab the welder real quick. I never wear gloves. But I think while we're in here building up material thickness, probably gonna get pretty hot. And you know, got my fire extinguisher. You might have noticed earlier I was grinding and my sparks were just going straight out of can of MAP gas right here. So I moved that. I think we are running desperately low on gas though. Which is not turned on either. Hey! Those look extremely porous. Should be great. Carry on. Well, we did officially, unfortunately, run out of welding gas. So, it's not fluxed core wire, so this kind of looks like shit. We got, you know, a couple good looking beads on there. Hopefully enough material to just go ahead and grind this down. Since there's nothing actual structural other than not falling off of the shaft, really doesn't need to be the best welds, you know, because we're just using it as a spacer to take up the gap. So we'll try going ahead and knocking the highs down, try to get it as close to our 19 millimeter and 14 millimeter thicknesses as possible. Try it in the shaft column, you know, see if it jiggles. If it's a tight fit, then maybe we'll just call it good enough and reassemble the car. Primarily using the ichrometer here. You know, it'd be nice to just chuck this old boy up in the lathe, but we ain't got that. So this is extremely hot. Gonna probably melt my plastic calipers. So if anything, it seems like we're under still. That one's over. And right at the tip, we're still over. So we need to focus on the tip. Tug it from the tip. Know what I'm saying, right? And then here we are. Still slightly oversized. Depending on the tools you have access to, this could look exceptional, or it could look really bad. I don't have the best abrasives or abrasive sponsorship or anything. So this thing sucks. So now we're just taking it a little at a time and getting it in there, seeing how deep we get, seeing if we can identify what is stopping us from getting the rest of the way in, knocking that ever so lightly with our grinder, and hopefully just inching up on it till it's perfect. So we've got our machined to a pretty good tolerance. Still more twisty slops than I'd like. A lot less, and probably not even noticeable. This does still need to go down farther into the D shaft on the column. However, I was looking at my reference mark here on my splines, and it really looks like we weren't very deep down into the universal on the rack. So I am a little concerned about that. So I might even try to leave it a little farther out and kind of close this D shaft up, either with just smashing it with a hammer, or maybe trying to controlled smash it with a vise or like a C-clamp to tighten that up. But once again, what's the factory spec for taking up that tolerance? It's a rubber coating, and I do have ultra black, which is, you know, vulcanized rubber that vulcanizes at room temperature. So we might give her the old sploosh of that, install it in the car, and then let her sit where it's supposed to be so that this fills up the voids. I don't know. I don't like this. We could weld some more and grind some more, which, if we had welding gas, is probably the route we would take. But I think it's just going to naturally be a little sloppy in there. The farther in it goes, the better it gets. However, I don't know. What do you guys think? We wasted a lot of time to not get this exactly right, you know? That's good. It's not the greatest. How much of that rubber coating stock, that's a tight fit, takes up that slack? Probably most of it. So I don't know. I think we're going to go with maybe a couple whacks with the hammer on the D shaft. Probably absolutely ruin our lives by not being able to get this back in there at all. And then hit it with the RTV and do the old reinstall. Then we'll find out in a few days whether or not we wasted all this time. Probably did. Oh well. So went ahead and focus, little buddy. Nope. Okay. Went ahead and hit the whole shaft with a light smattering of Ritiva, and a little extra on the tip there, as when we put it in, it'll hopefully just kind of squeegee it on down the shaft and take up our gap. Of course, the inside of this column is also filled with WD-40, which is probably going to affect how our RTV congeals. I've got some brake parts cleaner. Give that the old mess on my desk. And once that dries out, and this tacks up a little bit, hopefully we'll be ruining that Nitto sticker, I'll tell you that much. Hopefully we'll be in a good headspace, right? I don't know. Let's see. Installation is just opposite of installation, so this should be fairly easy, except for that wiring that some idiot put under his steering column, and now it's covered in RGB. Okay, so we'll fish this little guy through here, you know, gracefully or something. Oh yeah, this is easy, real easy. So in order to make fishing through and getting our alignment here, which our witness mark earlier, you can barely see it, but it's slightly off. But in order to make that easier, just put one of the nuts in to hold the column up in here. Up in here, up in here. Anywho, and then we'll get the splines where we want them, then get that plate mounted to the firewall, loosen these bad boys up, plug her all back in. I gotta put my tack back on, and then yeah, it's like done-ish or something. Emphasis on the or something. What a pain. Anywho, yeah. All right, started by getting that stud through the firewall. It actually needs to move over quite a bit before we'll be able to align the other bolts. But we are down there and we are in the spline and we were able to get our bolt through, which means we're close enough. We did miss our previous mark, but the steering wheel was previously a little crooked. We'll see how it ends up after this. It looks maybe right. It's slightly turned and those are slightly turned. So if not, we'll just move the steering wheel to line her all up the way it's supposed to be. So, oh yeah, a couple more bolts and we're done. Well, we're back on the ground. A seam blade up in there. You know, we're gonna let it tack up for a little bit before we go put any steering force on it. And hopefully once that RTV is nice and hard, we won't have any slop left in it. We'll see. Might drive it to a car meet later and we'll get a good idea of whether or not we did anything. Well, we did in fact fix the slop. It held up to driving pretty far to a car meet last night and home, and we even drove this thing to work this morning. So I would say we're good. We did it. Steering wheel is wildly crooked, so guess I'll blast that off real quick and recenter it. Should be good though. So hey, no slop.